All right, today we're digging into a story that's a real mystery in itself. We're talking about a ghost-written HP Lovecraft novella, one that was basically buried for half a century.
Okay, let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about some minor bit of editing work here. Clark Ashton Smith, one of Lovecraft's closest contemporaries, called it a genuine Lovecraftian masterpiece. That puts it right up there with his most famous stuff. So why on earth has almost no one heard of it?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And the answer, well, it's not just in the story itself. It's in the story of the story. It's this whole saga of creative frustration, a text that got completely mangled, and then finally this stunning revelation that kind of changed how we look at the entire Cthulhu mythos.
So to really get a handle on the puzzle of the Mound, you've got to start with this weird paradox at its heart. I mean, this is one of Lovecraft's most incredibly detailed works, but he wrote it for someone else, for a fee that, even back in 1930, was just shockingly low. And that right there is what makes the fact that nobody knows it so baffling. Even though it was a ghostwriting job, the Mound is absolutely top-tier Lovecraft world building. Seriously, it's not just a story. You could call it a work of cosmic anthropology. Okay, so to really appreciate what he did, you have to look at where this thing started. It began as this super simple, almost generic idea that Lovecraft found, frankly, pretty boring. It was more like a local campfire tale than the cosmic horror he was known for.
And what he did with it was just immense. Lovecraft himself called the original prompt insufferably tame and flat. So instead of just, polishing it up a bit, he took all that creative frustration and just poured it into the project. He turned a simple ghost story into a massive gateway for his own sprawling mythology.
Think about it. He took that one single sentence and blew it up into a text so huge that he even called it virtually my own. He built it all around what he called a merest non-plot suggestion. This wasn't just a revision job, people. This was a complete and total creative takeover. So what exactly did he create out of that? Well, the story we get is told through the journal of a 16th century Spanish explorer, a guy named Pánfilo de Zamacona, and he stumbles upon this incredible secret that's been hiding right under Oklahoma for eons.
The whole thing centers on this underground world called Canyon. And it's not just some cave. It's this whole civilization built layer upon layer on top of the ruins of even older, even more alien worlds. So Lovecraft isn't just describing a place here. He's literally excavating deep time.
So what Zamacona's journal reveals is this: terrifying geography. It's a literal descent, going down through one dead civilization after another, and each one you hit is more ancient and more horrifying than the last. It's not just a journey downward, it's a journey backward into the planet's absolute most nightmarish history.
And what does he find down there? He discovers a society that, yeah, they totally conquered science, but in doing so, they decayed into this profound cultural sickness. See, immortality made them bored, and that boredom led them to search for ever more extreme sensations, which basically turned their world into a really sophisticated scientific hell. And this is where the story gets really good, because it fuses that intellectual cosmic horror with some really visceral biological horror. The threat isn't ghost or magic. No, it's terrifyingly scientific. And Zamacona himself, he ends up becoming the very monster from the local legends. His reanimated corpse is the final, grotesque message sent up from below.
So, okay, if the story was this epic, why did it just vanish? How did it get lost? The answer is that the novella itself suffered a fate almost as dark and strange as its own plot. It basically became a victim of its own depth.
I mean, for almost 50 years, the only version of this story anyone knew was a completely corrupted one. Here's what happened. Lovecraft died before it ever got published. And his editor, a guy named August Thurleth, he butchered the text to cram it into a pulp magazine. And you have to appreciate the irony here. The very things that made this story a masterpiece, all that deep lore, the cosmic history, the wild science fiction elements, those were the exact parts that got chopped out. So the story's real genius was just hidden in plain sight for decades. But then, in 1989, the full original text was finally restored, and once that happened, the true importance of the Mound was finally revealed. Turns out, this wasn't just some standalone story. No way. It was a keystone for Lovecraft's entire universe. What we finally got to see is that the story acts like a massive nexus point. It actually codifies timelines and connects all these different entities from across the Cthulhu mythos. It answers questions that other stories only ever hinted at. And that's why this is such a big deal. The full, unabridged novella gives us foundational lore that completely recontextualizes some of the most famous parts of his entire legendarium. Seriously, without it, key parts of the mythos timeline, they just don't connect in the same way.
So the story of the Mound really shows us something, doesn't it? That sometimes the most profound truths aren't just buried under the earth. Sometimes they're buried in archives and forgotten manuscripts. It's a reminder that the most important discoveries might be the ones that were deliberately hidden away, just waiting for someone to finally start digging.